Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol. Jai Hari Nam Sankirtana ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Bhagavati Vaishnavrinda ki. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. 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 Om Jnana-timirandasya Jnananjana-shalakaya Chakshurumilitam yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam. Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagadatam Sagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parinasaitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitam Cha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dīnabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bharevacha Patikanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine. Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschata Deshatarine. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta-vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, everyone. So, we are discussing this final section of the second chapter of Bhagavad Gita. Krishna spoke in the 47th verse to do your duty, but to do it detached from the fruits. And we said detachment leads to happiness, which is very counterintuitive. Then Krishna spoke about someone who has achieved divine consciousness. It's a very blissful state of being, undisturbed by whatever may be happening around you, always at peace, always happy. And that is the goal of life of everyone, all of us situated here, as well as all of those not. The goal is the same, to attain this divine consciousness. So Krishna is giving the formula very precisely of how to find this perfect happiness. this divine consciousness. And it is not through some mystical magic or some random luck of the draw. If I win the lottery, I'll find divine consciousness. It is not like that. It is based on a very scientific process. And it begins with understanding who we are. So when Arjuna heard about this person, what did he do? How did Arjuna respond when he heard divine consciousness?
How to control the senses.
He asked how to get that. He said, time out, Krishna, stop. I want to know about this person. If someone has achieved something great, you sometimes wonder, tell me more, how you did it, what was the secret to your success? We read these biographies on great personalities. Right? And we try to understand what is it that led to their success, how they got there. Maybe I can apply some of that in my own life. So Arjuna asked 4 very important questions. And we see from the process of Arjuna's inquiry that asking questions is very, very important and also very, very powerful. Because it can shine light on things that we don't know or understand. So Arjuna asked, what are the symptoms by which this person may be known? And we said, what are the characteristics of this person? Are they tall or short? Are they from a particular part of the world? Are they rich or poor? What is the characteristics? So Krishna will give those. Then he said, how does he speak? Meaning, how is his mind and words affected when he faces various things? Good things, bad things, and also neutral things. What is his state of mind? Is he shaken from his perspective of being very blissful or steady? And then, what is the mentality of such a person? When the senses are controlled, are they frustrated, wishing they could do X, Y, and Z? Or are they at peace and very happy? And if so, why? How? So Arjuna wants to know this. And then he wants to know, what does he do? If the senses are controlled, what does one do in this state of divine consciousness? Do we just sit idle in a cave somewhere? Or is there some activities? So you can see Arjuna is asking very detailed questions to get to the gist of this. And thankfully for us, he has asked these questions, because now we can hear from Krishna the answers to them. And we said there was one key theme in this section of Bhagavad Gita. And what is that key theme?
How to control the sense gratification.
Yeah, controlling the senses, sense gratification. Okay. Now we said last time, does sense control mean we want to stop the senses?
No.
What do we want to do with the senses?
Use them in the right way.
Use them in the right way. And what is the right way and what is the wrong way? Meaning, right way will allow us to reach our goal. We'll explain what that is. Or we know the goal. The goal is to be happy. So how we want to use our senses in a way that will lead to enjoyment. One of eternal happiness and bliss. No more fear, anxiety, stress, lamentation. So Krishna is saying that we want to control the senses, not stop them. We'll talk about munis in this verse that we'll discuss today. Some spiritualists will take a vow of silence. I'll not speak. Not engaging this tongue. Or they'll try to withdraw to a very remote place in the forest. I don't want to see anything. I don't want to hear anything. And in this way, trying to control the senses. But what is the problem with such efforts?
It's impossible.
It's impossible. For us at least. And why it's impossible?
Because we have to live.
It's not fun. It's not enjoyable. Right? We want a process that's enjoyable.
And you couldn't go to work and say, I'm not going to talk.
You can't go to work and say, I'm not going to talk. No matter what your job is. So, what Krishna is going to show us is how to experience this happiness by the positive engagement of the senses, so that one achieves their ultimate goal. So these horses are like the senses. Who's the passenger?
Intelligence.
The passenger?
Mind.
Us.
No, we.
Soul.
Us, the soul. Thank you, the soul. Us being the soul. Right? Who's the driver?
Intelligence.
Intelligence. And what are the ropes?
Senses.
Mind. Mind. And the horses are the senses. Right? So the senses are constrained, controlled by the mind. And what controls the mind?
Intelligence.
Intelligence. And the intelligence then determines the journey of the soul. So we have to know what to do and what not to do. If we just let our mind dictate where to go, that is like the driver letting go of the reins. Then where will the chariot go? Left, right, who knows? Right? Anybody has a mind that takes us into crazy places? We all do. So how to control that? It takes a strong driver. It takes strong intelligence. Why we're gathered here week after week is to build our intelligence. To know how to make good decisions. So that when the mind gives ideas, we know whether to do them or not. Not all the ideas of the mind are bad. But how to put in the good bucket and the bad bucket. How to know. And what is good and bad, unfortunately, my friends, is not about what you and I think. Because that's what we've been trying for time immemorial. But the Lord has given us the guidelines. Just like in the home, child thinks, why can't I determine what's good or bad? Well, because you live in the home of your mother and father. But we're living in the home of the Supreme Lord. And so He's very lovingly giving us some guidance. So controlling the senses does not mean stopping the senses, but to engage them in a positive way. So we'll talk a little bit about that. Okay? So last week we said there are two characteristics that define this person in divine consciousness. It had nothing to do with whether they wear a dhoti and a kurta, whether they shave their head or have tilak, or whether they can memorize all 700 verses of Bhagavad Gita, or if they've lived in a temple for 25 years. Someone gave that example last time. Those are not the criteria or the characteristics Krishna gave. Does anybody remember there are two characteristics Krishna gave? Those,
How they talk.
how they talk, okay? But the symptom or the characteristic by which we can see whether this person is truly one in divine consciousness. They have two characteristics. Okay. So good we're doing review.
We all fail.
Final exam. See, next week's questions, if they're not answered, no prasad. Then everyone will write down answers. So the two symptoms. The first symptom, Krishna said in the 55th verse, right? Let's see. He said, who gives up all varieties of desire for sense gratification. So no material desires. What are material desires?
Red shirt.
Red shirt, blue shoes. What else? What are other material desires?
All those things. Houses, cars.
Houses, cars,
Money.
food, money.
Well, food's important.
I was in Boston 2 weeks ago, and we were walking, and we walked by this place. There was a long line. I said, "What is this line?" I mean, long.
It's probably for donuts or something.
It was for dinner. And I asked this person, "How long are you going to be waiting in line approximately?" They said they told us 2 hours. And I thought to myself, 2 hours to just fuel this body. Few moments of enjoyment of the tongue. But at the end of the day, all they're doing is nourishing the body. 2 hours waiting. So that type of food is a material sense desire, right? Any other types of sense desires? Fame. I want some prestige, honor, money. These are all material desires. So we say, what's wrong with this? Right? What's wrong with that? That's what everybody wants. So in our own experience, what's the problem with it that you've experienced personally?
They're endless.
They're endless. The desires don't end. And what happens then?
You want more stuff.
Which means you are never
Satisfied.
You're never satisfied. You're never retired. You're never satisfied. When you get that thing you desire, are you all done? You say no more?
We'll say more, again some more.
Again some more. Because what it is that we're desiring, when we get it, it doesn't yield the happiness we thought it was going to give us. So we want more. And that quest goes on, and it leads to frustration. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. So, no material desires. And the second characteristic? Happiness. They are in bliss. So this is the characteristic of one who has achieved this divine consciousness. Right? So now let's explore this material desires piece a little bit further. Because it's been ingrained in us to try to work so hard to meet these desires. We work 5-6 days a week, 30,
7.
40, 50,
Some people work
7. Some people work 2-3 jobs. Why? To acquire some income to then be able to satisfy the various desires. But at the end of it, it always leads to dissatisfaction. So momentary happiness and enjoyment. But then the thirst is not quenched. Not more. And this intense desire for things is called lust. Krishna is going to speak later in this chapter about lust. This intense hankering for things. And the problem with this lust is that when it goes unsatisfied, one becomes angry because of frustration. Just ask a child. You hold a piece of candy just out of their reach. I want it, I want it, I want it. And if they don't get it, how do they react?
Terribly.
Terribly. Well, we do too. In maybe a little bit more adult ways, but we do also. So this lust, when it goes unsatisfied, it leads to anger. If it gets satisfied, we get what we want, it creates greed because we want more. It's never enough. I want $1 million. When I get $1 million, I want 2 or 10. I wanted just a simple car so I don't have to take the bus and the bike anymore. And we get the simple car. And then I want the new car. And then I get the new car. Then I want the BMW. Then I want the 7-series. Then I need 2 cars. 3 cars. And it never ends. That is the nature of material desire. And so the reason this is so important is because it leads to this frustration.
Is
Now-
lust ever, I'm sorry, is
Yeah.
lust ever referred to like for people too, or just things?
What's that?
Lust in here is mentioned.
No, for people.
For people too.
Absolutely. That is the highest form of lust between man and woman, or between that. That is the highest
Because I
form.
thought it meant for like people. I didn't know that it meant like material things.
Yeah. No, it includes our relationships with people. Because that's, again, body to body. Our relationship with people is on the platform of the body, not of the soul. And we are trying to bring our relationships with people to the platform of the soul. Because that is who we are, is our eternal identity.
I never thought of lusting for like things.
Yeah. But we do, if you think, right? Because lust only means intense hankering. So I had this intense desire for that red shirt. That's a lust. It may be different degrees of lust, but that's the definition of it. Intense desire. And everyone has different ones. And not we all have the same. Some have no desire for money, but they have an intense desire for something else. So we all have their own. So let's understand now why material desires lead to misery. There's a scientific reason for it. We have our own experience, but still we doubt. Because we think, you know what? No, but if I get this, that, and the other, then I'll have it. But that's been going on for millions of lifetimes. So why is it not happening? What do we have here in this glass?
Oil.
Water and?
Honey.
Oil. That's oil. That's oil. What happens with water and oil? It doesn't mix. If I put a mixer in there, or pour it into a very powerful blender, will it mix?
No.
Really try to mix it, will it mix? No. So what the heck point am I making here? Oil and water is like trying to mix spirit and matter. Who are we? Spirit, soul. So if I am spirit, soul, the happiness must come from the soul, not from the body, matter. I am spirit. My happiness must come from spirit. So if I try, because the spirit soul, it is sat, chit, and ananda. Ananda means full of happiness. So the characteristic, the desire to find happiness is a very natural instinct of all of us. And it's a good thing. It's not a bad thing. But the question is where to find it. Because I am spirit soul, it must come from spirit. But what am I trying to do? I'm trying to mix spirit into matter, like oil into water. But no matter how much I mix, it's incompatible, as Srila Prabhupada would say. It's not compatible. Because spirit finds happiness from spirit. Our spirit soul will find its ananda in relationship with the Supreme Spirit, not in relationship with matter. So putting ourselves on that carriage and letting the senses try to taste all the different varieties of matter in the world, it ultimately leads to unhappiness. Because that's not who I am. It's like we use the example of, anyone remember the analogy we used of the spirit, soul, and the body? We used the example of the
car and the driver.
Car and the driver. If you go through your whole life owning a vehicle and just trying to give your car happiness, would that make any sense? I'm going to polish my car, I'm going to feed my car, I'm going to vacuum my car, but forget about feeding or bathing yourself or cleaning your own clothes. You're just worried about maintaining and loving and getting respect and awe of your car. Would that make any sense? Say no. Why? Because car is just a vehicle. It's not. You're the driver. Well, similarly, spending our whole life trying to satisfy these material desires for the body is just like that. This body is a vehicle. Residing within it is us as spirit soul. So this is why these material desires, they never lead to that enjoyment. We're trying to mix two things which are not compatible. And the material endeavors, the challenge is the results are very limited. And they're temporary. They're short-lived. They end. You work so hard to save up money and plan a great vacation, but it has a beginning date and a return date. When we go to Expedia, we have to put in both dates. We don't put one day, because we have to come back. When we go to a movie, it has a beginning time and an end time. When we go to that restaurant, at some point the people will say, time to go out, more people are waiting. Beginning and end. So that enjoyment is very temporary and very limited. Doesn't fully satisfy the thirst. So of course then the next question is, well, is there anything that will satisfy the thirst? And that we'll discuss in more detail next week when we discuss the 59th verse. But this is the fundamental reason spirit doesn't mix with matter. We can try to mix it, but it won't work. Just like you cannot mix this oil and water. So now let's read the verse for today. Somebody wants to read the verse?
One who is not disturbed in mind even admit the threefold miseries or elated when there is happiness, and who is free from attachment, fear and anger is called a sage of steady mind. Purport. The word muni means one who can agitate his mind in various ways for mental speculations without coming to a factual conclusion. It is said that every muni has a different angle of vision, and unless a muni differs from other munis, he cannot be called a muni in the strict sense of term. Nāsāv, but a sthita-dhīr muni, as mentioned herein by the Lord, is different from an ordinary muni. The sthita-dhīr muni is always in Krishna consciousness, for he has exhausted all his business of creative speculations. He is called praśānta-niḥśeṣa-mano-rathāntara, or one who has surpassed the stage of mental speculations and has come to the conclusion that Lord Śrī Kṛṣṇa or Vasudeva is everything. Vasudeva sarvam iti sa mahatma su-durlabhaḥ. He is called a muni fixed in mind. Such a fully Krishna conscious person is not at all disturbed by the onslaught of the threefold miseries, for he accepts all miseries as the mercy of Lord, thinking himself only worthy of more trouble due to his past misdeeds, and he sees that his miseries by the grace of Lord are minimized to the lowest. Similarly, when he is happy, he gives credit to the Lord, thinking himself unworthy of the happiness. He realizes that he is due only to the Lord's grace that he is in such a comfortable condition and able to render better service to the Lord. And for the service of Lord, he is always daring and active and is not influenced by the attachment or aversion. Attachment means accepting things for one's own sense gratification, and detachment is the absence of such sensual attachment. But one fixed in Krishna consciousness has neither attachment nor detachment, because his life is dedicated in the service of Lord. Consequently, he is not at all angry even when his attempts are unsuccessful. Success or no success, a Krishna conscious person is always steady in his determination.
So, Prabhupada is commenting here that even detachment from the sensual attachment is not recommended. That's a little bit hard to comprehend. In next week's verses we'll see that very clearly. That Krishna is not saying to detach from your senses. He is again saying, use your senses in the means of spirit, because you are spirit. So now, one who is not disturbed in mind, even amidst the threefold miseries. Forget about what the threefold miseries are for a moment, but not disturbed in mind when confronted with miseries.
That's a pretty deep statement.
That's an extraordinarily deep statement.
It seems impossible.
And it seems impossible. But how many of us would like it? Free from fear and anger. Anybody? This is a stage of a steady mind. So let's understand one thing. If it were impossible, Krishna would not speak it. Because it would have no value to Arjuna. Arjuna is his best friend, and he's trying to help him. He's not going to speak in theory in the middle of a battlefield, moments before this battle is going to take off. He's not going to talk about hypotheticals. He's going to speak about what is immediately achievable. And immediately achievable, easily. So this very, very high position, and I'm glad you said it seems impossible, because it is extraordinarily difficult to achieve unless we have a very powerful means. Okay? Just like if you have a big car, you cannot lift it, right? But if you have simply a hydraulic jack with a few pushes, you can lift the car. Very difficult to lift the car, right? You can say impossible. But what made it possible was a powerful piece of equipment, right? So what is the powerful thing that we can use to develop this not disturbed in mind, even amidst the threefold miseries?
Our faith.
Faith in? Because faith in something may or may not. But our practice of bhakti, our devotional service, this is the very strong piece of equipment, if you will, that can make the impossible possible. And Krishna says, by the practice of devotional service, one can at once conquer all of this. Not after decades and decades or lifetimes and lifetimes of practice. Krishna says at once. Daivi hesha gunamayi mamam maya duratrayam mam eva ye prapadyante mayamitam tarandite. Mam eva ye prapadyante. When one is ready to surrender to the Lord, he says at once they overcome all of this. Just like at once you can lift that vehicle. So it is good to appreciate the very high position that this is, but also to appreciate the extraordinarily powerful means Krishna is giving us this process of devotional service. So what is a muni versus a sthita-dhīr? So Prabhupada speaks in the beginning of this purport about the position of a muni. What does he say about the situation of a muni in the purport? That's the second muni, but what about the first muni? What conclusion can they come to?
One who agitates his mind in various...
One who agitates his mind So what Prabhupada is explaining here is one who, through speculation, tries to figure things out.
Does muni mean person?
It's a type of person. Yeah, it's just actually kind of a state of mind. Once in theory is controlled the mind. There's not a great English translation for the word muni, actually, but it's a type of person. But these munis that we see very broadly, they're speculating on all kinds of theories of probability, how the world came into existence, who we are, what is nature, where is the spiritual world, where is the hellish, does it exist? And they go on and go on and go on, agitating their mind and thought process to develop some ideas. But the flaw is that they never come to any conclusion, because then it becomes a matter of your opinion versus my opinion. They're all talking about things that are unprovable. Like, where did the earth come from? Nobody can prove it. So you can come up with theories all day long, and we all can come up with our theories. That's what movies do. But we know one must come to get to a factual conclusion. One must go to the ultimate source of all knowledge, and that is the Supreme Lord. So by studying the scriptures, the Shastra, the sthita-dhīr Muni knows, has a factual conclusion of who I am, who is the Supreme Spirit, and what is my relationship. The sthita-dhīr Muni has mastered these three pieces of knowledge. Who am I? Who is God? And what is my relationship? And because they have mastered that, there's no more left to be speculated. No more what-ifs. When there is no more what-ifs, one can very confidently go about their practice. If we think, well, what about this? What about that? We'll always have some level of reluctance, hesitation. But the sthita-dhīr Muni has none. And so their situation is very, very sweet and peaceful. Okay? So let's see. Now, what is our mind like? Is it undisturbed?
Yeah, only when we are sleeping.
And even then,
Mine? No way. I have crazy dreams when I'm sleeping.
yeah, how many of us wake up, the mind races faster when we're sleeping than when we're up? We sometimes wonder,
Absolutely.
I feel like I'm sleeping when I'm up, and when I'm sleeping, I feel like everything is not. Right? So our mind is like this. Monkeys just jumping around in a cage of our mind. These ideas and thoughts, and we try to wrestle them down.
That's why people use drugs.
That's right, exactly. They use so many drugs, try to enter a different realm. They're trying to get the monkeys to sit. Anybody try to wrestle monkeys in the cage? That's not so easy. It's very, very difficult, right? So this is the state of our mind. And nobody wants it, because one doesn't make good decisions, one isn't even keeled, one doesn't develop good relationships, one accomplishes nothing successful professionally. Like, nothing good happens when the mind is like this. So how to bring the mind to peace, right? So what does a peaceful mind mean to you? Oh,
No worries.
No worries.
no worries. I heard that twice. Okay.
No stress.
No stress.
No thoughts.
No thoughts. Okay? What else?
Happiness.
Happiness. Any other ideas of what a
No,
peace?
we're good. We can get those three things.
What's that?
We're good if we could just get those
If we get those three things,
We're
we're
good.
good. We've accomplished our goal. Right? So no anger. How many of us like to have no enemies? We don't see friend and foe. Right? We'd like just to be equal to all. Not worried about our own situation. We're not even bothered by the mosquitoes who come and take just a little bit of food for their subsistence. Not bothered. Let it be. Once Srila Prabhupada was enjoying some bowl of fruits, and some ants came. And the devotee went to take it to wash. He says, no problem, how much to eat? It's undisturbed by little inconvenience. But us, in an agitated mind, the littlest of things throw us into a tornado. So this peaceful mind, we want to be able to be happy, whether we are rich or whether we are poor. Whether it is summer or winter. Whether we are here in America or in Iceland or India or Africa or Antarctica, we want it universal. No fear, no stress, no anxiety. Is it possible?
No.
I see one no. Is it what? Is it possible?
Yeah, I think it just takes a lot of work.
I think it takes a lot of work. But it takes intelligent work. Just working, and we have to know how. Someone has to explain to us how it is possible.
That's why we're here.
That's why we're here. Thank you. That is exactly why we're here. Because we are trying to hear, because Krishna is going to explain how it is possible. And not only that, this very difficult thing that seems, he's going to explain how it is possible through the most enjoyable process. Who gives us that bargain? If we want to achieve something great, we know we have to work very, very hard for it. No pain, no gain. But Krishna's formula is not like that. He's going to speak how one can easily become free of all sense desires. Not by artificially trying to give up all those desires. No. But by experiencing the higher taste of Krishna. We'll slowly, naturally say, waiting 2 hours in line for this food makes no sense. The temple is serving nice hot praśānta and it tastes so much better. So how one can achieve that very easily. Okay? So, some things here about how to develop a peaceful mind. When a sthita-prajna, a Krishna consciousness person, when good things happen, what do they see as the source of the good things happening? Krishna's. And when bad things happen, what do they think as the source of the bad things? Past karma. Now what do? The exact opposite. When a good thing happens, and when a bad thing happens, Krishna, where are you? I came and put money in a hundi last week. I swept your floor. You didn't hear me? Okay, I'll try one more time. That's what we do. We blame Krishna when bad things happen. And when good things happen, I did it. That is our nature. But a sthita-prajna, one who is fixed in divine consciousness, they see all the good things that they get materially. Krishna's mercy. He is so kind and generous. And when some setbacks come, it's my past. But Krishna is minimizing it. Because he is so compassionate and merciful. He is minimizing.
Does Krishna give us material things though?
Good question.
Because that was an interesting statement you just said.
So, Krishna will explain in the 7th chapter, those who go to Krishna for material desires, wanting material things. So, and he considers them to be very pious.
What's that mean again?
Good, sweet. He doesn't think, oh, these people who come to me for material desires, no, only my pure devotees, anyābhilāshita shunyam, no desires. No, he says, even if one comes to me in desires of, in this, he says, one who's in distress, one who's in need of money, one who is wise or curious. Even if they come to me, they're pious. Why? Because I'll fulfill their desires. But I'll fulfill them in a way that is good for them. Not necessarily in the way they want, but in a way that is good for them. Just like when a child goes to mother and says, I want ice cream. Sometimes mother will fulfill that desire, but sometimes not. Based on the criteria, what is good for them. So Krishna says, if you have material desires, still it's better if you come to me. Because why? Because I'll give you based on what's best for you. And what the benefit of going to Krishna is that he says, I will ultimately purify you of those desires. Because if we're going to go to Krishna and we ask him for some material desires, we know we're asking for some temporary happiness because it can't last. Whatever it is we ask for material, it can't last. Whether it's wealth or fame or beauty or whatever it is, it all deteriorates in time. And it's very limited. But we're going to someone who is unlimited and eternal. And we're asking for something that is limited and temporary. It is like going to a very rich, generous person and asking for a few grains of rice. So Krishna is saying, if you're going to come to me, ask me for strength in becoming a sthita-dhīr. Because from that you'll conquer everything. But if you come to me also for material desires, I'll fulfill them. But in a way that is good for you so that you'll ultimately purify to even better desires that will bring you better results. It's not going to bring Krishna better results. It's going to bring all of us better results. And that is this eternal state of happiness, free of stress and anxiety. So yeah, Krishna will fulfill them, but in a way that is best for us, just like a loving mother and father will. So, and the most peaceful thing that leads to peace is the results. We stress out. Our mind gets so disturbed about the results. But when we learn to let Krishna control those results, then everything becomes very peaceful. Now we'll say, or one may say, well, then that makes us powerless. It makes us unengaged. What is the sense of our endeavor? One may wonder that position, right? So we have to understand then what is the relationship between us and Krishna. If I'm a spirit soul and Krishna is a supreme spirit, I have this eternal relationship which is of service to Krishna. And how that can yield my happiness, my peace of mind. Well, Krishna gives this peace formula at the end of the 5th chapter. He says, Bhoktaram yagnatapasam sarva loka maheshwaram surdam sarva bhutanam yakva mam shantim vichati. Shantim. Peace. It is achieved when we know 3 things. First, Krishna is the source of everything. He is the beneficiary of all yagyas, all bhoktaram yagya tapasam. Also, whatever benedictions, boons we get from all of our pious acts, those things come from Krishna. So whatever it is we may be trying to enjoy in this material world, where it exists in unlimited quantities, in its pure form, with Krishna. He has it all. Second thing, He is the Supreme Lord of everything. By worshipping Krishna, you worship every worshipable personality. It is the Supreme. From Him, everything else emanates. And one can achieve peace then knowing, I have now come to the ultimate sarva karana karanam, cause of all causes. It's just like in a corporation, if you're working, if you're serving, your boss, who's the boss's boss, his boss's boss is ultimately the CEO, your dependence is still not directly controlled by the owner. And if you come to the point of ultimately working for the CEO, there's nowhere else to go. You've reached the highest path, and one can find peace there. So similarly, knowing Krishna to be the Lord of everything can give us faith in our Krishna consciousness. There's nothing else to do, because He is the Supreme Lord of everything. And that's why Lord Brahma says, Ishvara Parama Krishna. He is the Supreme Controller of everything. The Parama Ishvara. That is Krishna. And the best fact Krishna gives to give us the ultimate peace, how we can be happy even when distress comes, how we can be peaceful when things don't go our way, is when we know that the Supreme Lord is our ultimate well-wisher. He says, the benefactor and well-wisher of all living entities. Now think about this. When we were a child and we were scared, when we ran to our mother and father, we were immediately comforted from whatever fear we had, because they were our well-wisher, protector. But who is our ultimate protector? Even the protection of mother and father is limited. Despite all of their efforts and desires, sometimes they fail in their protection, and the children encounters danger, sometimes severe. But Krishna's protection, it is infallible. It never fails. It is not, oh, he was busy with the neighbor, so he forgot about me. Krishna is unlimited. He can pay attention to each and every one of us as individuals. It is not, oh, he ran out of all of his loving resources there, and I was left with nothing. Like when we get to the feast late, and then there's no gulab jamuns, no samosas left. Krishna never runs out. He's unlimited. And he says, I'm the well-wisher of which living entities? All of them. All of them. When we know these three things, then in the midst of adversity, we can have faith. Yes, I'm going through some setback, but Krishna has not forgotten me. And He can protect me and will protect me. Knowing this, having faith in the protection of the Supreme Lord in love, one can become very peaceful through all kinds of circumstances. Because when things don't go our way, we remember, Krishna's plan is perfect. Our plan, not so much. When we learn to surrender to the will of the Lord, we achieve this great position of, that's Krishna's issue, not mine. If it works, great. If it doesn't work, no problem. And that's why Prabhupada says, this is a powerful statement, he says. What I love about Srila Prabhupada's purport, usually his first sentence and his last sentence are like very strong and jarring. And he says, success or no success, a Krishna conscious person is always steady in his determination. That's a very powerful statement, because whose success is it? It is Krishna's. You know, I'm playing a small role in Krishna's plan. He is my well-wisher. I'm never going to be out of His loving umbrella. So let me perform my devotional service, my Krishna consciousness, to the best of my ability. But I don't have to worry about all the end results I cannot control. Did this person help? Did this person do that? Did this person even acknowledge I did this work? All these worries we have. Who has known what we did? Krishna. If it didn't manifest, Krishna is the supreme controller. Nothing can happen. Not even a blade of grass can sway in the wind without His control. Must be some reason. Okay, Krishna, you didn't want this. No problem. I'll try another way tomorrow. But instead, if we become dejected, trying to attach to that result, we lose our determination. But if we remain surrendered to the love and protection of the Supreme Lord, everything becomes. So the sthita-dhīr, because no material desires, they're full of spiritual desires, full of thoughts of Krishna. They're very steady in the midst of the ups and downs. Knowing the one thing that I really value. What is fear? Fear is the anxiety over losing something you value. And let's give the example. Nobody fears losing their garbage because they don't value the garbage. Nobody fears that. Nobody fears ridding the bacteria in my body that is causing the disease. I don't value it. I want it out. So we fear losing things we value, right? When I come to understand that I am spirit soul, part and parcel of Krishna, what is it that really has value? What has value?
Just our relationship.
With
Krishna.
my relationship with Krishna. And can that ever be lost? No. So the sthita-dhīr is fully fearless. They're not worried about losing their material condition. Their only fear is, Krishna, please don't ever let me forget my eternal loving relationship with you. Because that's what I have value. Yeah, if I lose my car, no problem. I lose my house, no problem. I lose my body, no problem. Just don't let me ever forget my loving relationship with you. So a spiritual-minded person, they have no fear. Doesn't mean they become oblivious. Let me drive 200 miles an hour on the freeway. Krishna will protect me. That is not the proper application of this. So we also have to be intelligent in the application. So this result, when we perform our activities, we have to be patient. When Krishna wants it to happen, it will happen. But my job is to put forth the effort. Be determined. Right? And ultimately, as we progress in reading this Bhagavad Gita, we'll see how the Lord, particularly in the 9th chapter, is constantly showering all of His blessings upon all of us, because we are attempting to become His sincere devotee.
How is that balanced like that?
What's that?
How is that balanced like that?
It's a figure. But it seems impossible, right? That a rock can balance a feather. But we have to balance our patience and determination. Rupa Goswami says, Utsaha-niḥśeṣa-mano-rathāntara. He has one more thing. We should be confident. Rupa Goswami says, be confident. Be confident in what? Krishna's mercy. If we're not confident in Krishna's mercy, we'll have doubts. What if He's not there? Rupa says, no, be confident. He will be there. And also be confident that the only means to find perfection of life is in your relationship with Krishna. Why? Because oil doesn't mix with water. Spirit only finds happiness in spirit. So be confident in those two things, he says. Krishna's mercy will come, and the highest perfection of life is achievable by your Krishna consciousness. So yes, the impossible becomes extraordinarily possible by the powerful means of bhakti, by the powerful process of chanting the holy names. The very difficult becomes instantly available. And how fast we'll achieve it, it depends on us. How sincerely we apply the teachings Krishna has given us. So next week, we're going to discuss one of my favorite verses in the entire Bhagavad Gita. And it speaks about how loving the Lord is that he says to get rid of all your material desires is very difficult. And he says, don't worry about giving up your material desires. Huh? He says, don't worry. Just start practicing devotional life by tasting the sweetness of bhakti. Don't worry. All these other things will go away. Subtraction by addition. Subtraction by addition is the formula Krishna is giving us. No one else gives us that formula. But Krishna does. So we'll discuss this. How to find this state of becoming free of all our material desires. Also seeming very, very difficult, but very easy. So everything we read in Bhagavad Gita that seems difficult, yet very sweet and something we want, remember one thing. By the potency of bhakti, it is very, very reachable. Okay. Any questions or comments?
I have a question.
Yes.
Are we supposed to be thankful, like say thank you every night to all the good things that happen to us throughout the day? Because it really isn't part of the formula, right? If you go through the...
Yeah, it's ultimately the best way we can be thankful for all the things that happen to us in the day is to render devotional service. Because by rendering devotional service, we are acknowledging directly that I am an infinitesimal spark within this world, fully dependent on Krishna. Seriously, if you think about it, the ego-shattering position is, what is it that we can actually do on our own?
Nothing.
Absolutely nothing. Not even one breath. You can take a breath. Who is going to process that breath to achieve the needs of the body even? Some engineering that we have no control over. If gravity were to shut off today, what kind of existence we would have? If the sun all of a sudden extinguishes, what type? Who is maintaining this? Everything in our life is Krishna. So by the practice of bhakti, by chanting specifically the holy names, we're acknowledging, Krishna, everything I am is because of your kind, loving compassion. And my opportunity is to express my appreciation through devotional service. Why we do devotional service? Bhakti means it is an expression of my love to Krishna. And the expression of my love in reciprocation for everything he has given us. So by practicing this process of chanting, honoring prasadam, rendering service, going to see him in his home in the temple, these things yield very sweet. How many of you were there? Many of you were there. I'll ask me, what was your experience?
The kind of bliss it was. No I can't express how I felt.
You can't express it.
Yes, just keep on watching Radha, like into her.
You can't quite put your hand on it. And you think, well, what kind of hallucinogens are you on? You know? But that's the experience. That is Krishna's reciprocation. That is his thank you is so overwhelming we can't, but it's there, it's tangible. You could feel it. It's real. It's not a fact of emotion or sentiment. That is a form of devotional service. Chanting his holy names. It is the most potent form of devotional service. It says, Harinam, 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 Ev Kevalam, Kalo Nashteva, 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 Gatirnita. In this age, the only means, 3 times they said, is chanting of the holy names, chanting of the holy names, chanting of the holy names. What is the only means? And then the next question, what else? What else? There is no else. It's the only way. and it's the most suitable. So every day when we chant the holy names of the Lord, we are saying thank you. We are acknowledging. Long answer to your question. I promise the next answer won't be so long, otherwise no one will ask.
I thought that was the answer, but I just felt bad. Like,
Yeah.
oh, you just always have to say thank you. Always
Yeah.
I was, you know.
It is. It's great to have a heart of gratitude. Actually, love cannot exist in the heart without the emotion of gratitude. You have to have this emotion of gratitude. And the gratitude must ultimately come to the source of all our existence, and that is the Supreme Lord. But unfortunately, if we try to provide gratitude to ourselves and to others and forget He who is the source of all, then that happiness will never come. So it's a good desire to want to express our gratitude. And the question is how best to express it. And that is by glorifying the Supreme Lord. When we chant, we're glorifying Krishna. Yeah.
I have a couple of questions on desires, Prabhu.
Yeah.
So, these desires comes from where? Is it coming from mind?
The desires, where are they coming from? You have desires like this? So where is the desires coming from? Right? So the desires come as the senses engage in anything, they acquire impressions. Those are stored as desires in the mind. When you saw the beautiful lotus feet and the beautiful flower outfit of Srimati Radharani, some desires probably came. I want to see again. I want to stay one more minute. These desires came. Where they came? Because things were entering the eyes. Also maybe through the ears, through the smells. So through the senses, desires come. You walk by the pizza shop and you see what happens. Desires come. So as our senses engage with whatever, matter or spirit, desires come. So how to have good desires? Let the senses engage in good things. Why don't we let our children watch certain things? Because bad desires will come, bad thoughts in the mind will come, which will lead to bad actions. So we don't want them to see it. So we have to also protect what we let our eyes and ears and mouths, what we let our senses interact with. Why? Because desires will become implanted. So we have to be very careful. I should not watch this. It's not going to help me. It's going to make it more difficult. Better I go watch the Supreme Lord. I should not hear this. Let me hear some pastimes of the Lord or some bhajans. Your next question?
Yeah, again, what is the connection between free will and desire?
Yeah. So, desires get stored in the mind, and free will means I have an option to act on those desires, but it is limited by the sanction of Krishna. So I may have the desire to be a billionaire, but if I don't have the qualification due to my past karma, it's not going to happen. So free will is not independent. I may have a desire to live in a mansion. Well, that may be fulfilled, but whether I live in that mansion as a cockroach or the owner, that is based on my past karma and the sanction of Krishna. So my free will is not meaning all my desires are absolute. Then I'd be the supreme controller. Krishna's desires are absolute. What he wants happens because he is Krishna. So Krishna will never force us to be his devotees, to be in loving relationship with him. That is our free will to choose whether we want. And he says to those who choose to be in absence of me, far away, he says, I also grant them that and perpetually cast them in the light, in darkness, because that's their desire. So we have free will. but the actions are based on Krishna's sanction and our past qualification. Krishna doesn't, he's not biased in who can be a billionaire and who cannot be. He's not just picking randomly. So if you want to be a billionaire, you can. You must go to the Vedas, find out the karma, conduct sacrifices that generate wealth, and go do them. And you'll become. But then have the intelligence know how it came. It wasn't your own doing. It's okay?
But again, we say that we have a freedom to operate on certain things. That freedom again, it depends on Krishna's mercy, right?
Our freedom is what we call minute independence.
Yeah, that's what I was asking.
But Krishna doesn't interfere with that. So we depend on Krishna to sanction it because it has a sanction. But Krishna sanctions impartially based on our past actions. So I want to move my hand, right? I have a desire. But some people can move their arm. But if I'm sitting next to someone who has suffered paralysis, they cannot move their arm. But they have a desire, but it's not happening. Why? Krishna doesn't like that? No. Because of their past karma, something led that they cannot move their arm. So, our free will is to express our desires. That's it. After that, prakrute kriyamanani gunai karmani sarvasha ahankara vigata kartaham iti manyate. Due to ahankara, false ego, I think I am doing. I am moving my arm. No. Who is? Prakrute. The material nature. That is at carrying out. So my role in action is to express my desire. And then based on my qualification, it is either granted or not. So if I want it to be granted, I have to work for the qualification. I have to get the good karma. Avoid the bad karma. If I act like a fool, and then I go to the teacher and say, I want the A grade, he says, you acted like a fool. I don't care what you want. If you wanted it, you should have acted appropriately. So we can't act one way and then expect something. Nowhere. You go to the office. If you don't work enthusiastically and do your job properly, you can't expect, I want the check, give it to me. Your want has to also be matched by qualification, action. So in all aspects of life, our independent desires isn't, Krishna's is. That's why he's Ishvara Parama. But we are not. And we never will be. We are trying. We want to have that type of control. We want that type of control. And because we don't get it, we get frustrated. We have to lose that desire and instead say, it's better Krishna has that control. He has the responsibility. All we have to do is enjoy with him. Much easier. Okay. Any other questions, comments?
No, but again, desire is the one which keeps people motivated, right?
Yeah. So what kind of desires we want? Krishna consciousness is not about stopping desires. Otherwise we want to stop the senses. Krishna consciousness is about engaging the senses to develop good desires. Krishna is going to speak in a few verses about becoming desireless. Desireless doesn't mean no desires. It means no material desires. So we should acquire very strong spiritual desires. And our determination will be fueled in exercising those spiritual desires. Well, how to acquire spiritual desires? Engage our senses in spiritual activities, and spiritual desires will come. If I want material desires, engage my senses in matter, and material desires will come. Right? So Krishna says, use the senses. In spiritual life, spiritual desires will come. And the desire to go to the home of the Supreme Lord, where there is no misery, no stress, no anxiety, eternal bliss, in loving relationship. That's an intense desire that will fuel our practice in devotional life. If I have no desires, to empty the mind, to have no thoughts, then I'll do nothing. I'll become inactive. That's why Krishna said in that 47th verse, don't become inactive. You must do your duty, but detach from the result. So it's a nice clarification that we're working to turn our material desires out and add spiritual desires. We're not just trying to empty the material desires. No, we are trying to add spiritual desires. And those spiritual desires will lead us to, oh, I'd like to read about Krishna, I'd like to hear, let me render some service for him, let me sing about him, let me speak about him, let me do this, let me chant. That'll create the determination in our bhakti. But unless we have some desires of spiritual life, then the actions will not come. Hopefully after each session we're getting some more spiritual desires. And some less material desires. That is the goal.
Material desires or spiritual desires, Prabhu, it's all based on individual's choice, that minute independence which you said, but that is not depending on past karma.
What do you mean?
That minute independence, if somebody is getting a spiritual desire, that is based on his own choice, not by past karma.
It's called past sukriti, agnya sukriti. So how we all came here.
What do you mean?
How did we all come?
Like on earth?
No, to this session to be able to hear about Krishna. It is not just by some random occurrence. We may attribute this person invited me, somehow this person.
No.
But it happened because there was something we did good. This agnya sukriti, even unknowingly. And a small desire manifested, some attraction manifested, that then Krishna fulfilled by bringing us all together. That's the only way.
Okay, that could be this life or
Could be 100 lifetimes ago. It could be yesterday. We don't know. Doesn't matter. But we should know it is due to some good fortune and the mercy of the devotee. Srila Prabhupada's mercy upon all of us is so strong. He is helping us overcome all of our past karma and misqualifications by presenting this knowledge to us. So the devotee's job, they're so compassionate, they have so much sadness seeing souls lost in their attempts to control the mind to find happiness, that they try to spread this knowledge. Even if their sukriti is not there. Trying to create it by being in their midst. And that's what Srila Prabhupada did. He left the holy place of Vrindavan and came to America and then traveled at the very old age. Why? Compassion. Compassion. Out of the pain in his heart. Not because his material desires are fulfilled, not fulfilled. Out of the compassion, seeing the suffering humanity. By that kind of mercy, whatever our past karmas is can be overcome even. That is the potency of a pure devotee of the Lord. Okay? Did I answer your question okay? Or your comment? It was really more of a comment.
I mean, it's more of a question and comment.
It's a good one, a great clarification on desires. Because some spiritual paths suggest, we want to empty the mind. It's not possible. It is. That is impossible. It is actually impossible. You can temporarily try to suppress it, like you can temporarily try to suppress those monkeys. Instead, we want to fill the mind with good thoughts.
Some desires will be so intense, like more you try to detach, more you break the roots and you want to do it. It happens like I'm so much addicted to Krishna, like I want to stop it, but
The what?
tea and coffee.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
like my major weakness, I can say. I can overcome anything, but those things are like today I thought like Ekadashi will stop it. But more I think it will stop and get tempted more.
Come next week. This Krishna is going to give us the formula. How to do it? Just keep doing more spiritual life. Don't worry, it will happen. We all have it. We all have that few things that are so tightly bound, we have to wonder, will it ever break? Don't worry. You are not alone. You are in the company of, we all have it. So, but what's the formula? Don't worry so much about, no, I should break it, but focus on more chanting, more reading, more association, more service, and I guarantee you it'll break. And
Is your
everyone
drink of tea and coffee really a problem?
It's all relative.
Like, what's going on with the coffee? I mean, are you like stealing it? Like, I don't understand how that's a problem.
No, you have like kind of a health problem, so it's like creeping in. So I just thought like I would stop it. Not just-
So let's. So there are.
That's like a minor problem.
It is very.
For me, like it's a major problem.
Yeah.
From childhood, I have this people.
And that's why it's relative. Like so, to each of us, we have these vices, right? Like, getting rid, giving up red shirts, no big deal. But then, so all of us have these relatively small things, but they're very major for us. And like that, what's wrong with wanting a red shirt? In the grand scheme of things,
You don't really need a red shirt.
nor is it that destructive, but it's not also productive. Coffee, it's a source of intoxication.
Coffee?
Yeah, it's a stimulant. It's a stimulant. Now it's less intoxication than booze, less stimulant than cocaine. So there's all gradations, but it's a minor. It is a form, not a minor. Why is it so addictive? Because it's a stimulant. So, and what's wrong with intoxication? Well, the sthita-dhīr, the mind, becomes unsettled when on top of stimulants. Why do we want stimulants? Because we're trying to artificially get beyond other things. So by the power of Krishna consciousness, you automatically get the stimulants you need through a spiritual means. That's the beauty of it. We intoxicate at times to get to a different place. That's why the devotees in the 60s, their tagline for the Krishna conscious, you know what their tagline was?
Get high or something said?
Stay high forever. Never come down. That was the goal. The goal was somehow to stay high and never have to come down. Every drug addict, they feared coming off the down. The down slope was brutal. So the goal was how to stay high forever. And Krishna consciousness was the path to stay high forever. It's a very intoxicating experience. But in a spiritual intoxication, not a material intoxication. Because material is artificial. So, and it'll happen. Don't worry. It's guaranteed. Just like lifting that car. It's not going to happen with your own strength. You trying to break it won't happen. But with the mercy of Krishna coming from your sincerity and devotional service, it'll happen.
It would be the first step towards Krishna consciousness.
It'll happen.
You can't, what do they say? You can't change or give up behavior. You can't break behavior, you have to just change it. Right? Like if you quit smoking, you can't just say I'm going to quit smoking, you got to find something else to do. So you could read like your Bhagavad Gita or chant, and then maybe you won't need the coffee and go out to, you know what I mean? You just have to, rather than doing that, do something else.
And that's what the 59th verse Krishna is going to say. By a higher taste, you're going to give up something lesser. So I'm not going to give up smoking, as you said, until I can replace it with something better.
And it doesn't take that long. I think they say if you do it for 30 days, right? If you read like a chapter in the Bhagavad Gita, rather than have a cup of coffee, and then did the next thing you got to do, take care of the baby or whatever. If you do that for 30 days, then you'll kind of forget about the coffee, and you'll be looking for your time to read where you have 10 minutes apiece. I don't know. It's just like that. I don't have one of it.
When I'm in temple, I don't have that, like, I should. But when I'm at home, definitely I need it.
I think you have to talk to Valli.
But
She was like this.
You only need it because
She was like this
it's just
1
a
year before.
habit. I don't think
Now
we
you
really
ask
need
her.
anything. I think it's just a habit.
The body becomes...
You know, I don't think we need it. I think you just have it.
I used to drink at night, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock.
Yeah. 1 year before.
Yeah.
That's 1 year
I was
before.
addicted to coffee.
Many people.
Yeah.
And again, whether it's coffees, it could be movies, it could be cricket matches, it could be politics, it could be songs, it could be whatever it is, you know, t-shirts, it could be anything. We all have these strong
It
attachments.
becomes so desperate when you, it's like when you're trying to stop something like, and you can't do it, then you realize like how it was part of your life. It was small thing, but all this time I'm doing unknowingly and I'm trying to stop. And I don't see the difference between drug addiction and the coffee addiction. It seems same to me now. So,
It's, like I said, that's lust. We have lust, and the only way to conquer it is by devotional service. Krishna Bhakti.
Yeah.
Bhakti will extinguish all of it. It is the ultimate fire extinguisher. It burns in our heart. And so we have to extinguish it. And that is the extinguishing process. And that is why if Krishna consciousness was not the reciprocation, if there wasn't a sweet taste to it, it'd be so difficult. Someone says you have to give up this, give up that, give up that, give up that. I don't want to give up anything. Krishna says, don't worry. No, not give up. Trade. Trade something lesser for higher. If you have a $10 bill in your hand and I offer you a $100 bill to exchange, will you exchange it? How many times, if I offer you 100 times, how many times out of 100 you'll exchange it? Because you're giving up something lesser for something greater. So whatever hundreds, thousands, millions desires you have in the mind, trust me, they're all inferior in the light of spiritual life. So by just experiencing more spiritual life, we'll automatically begin to change. Because I'm giving up something lesser for something higher, it's easy. And that lesser higher is not in theory, it's our own experience. It's our own experience. What you all used to do on Thursday evenings? Something else. Drink. Something else you were doing.
Yeah.
And you've given that up for this. Why?
Curious.
You're curious.
I'm just kidding.
The food, something, whatever it is. It could be the show. Maybe the philosophy. Whatever it is, something. Something has kept us.
question's been answered.
What's a cricket match?
Football of India.
Oh, okay.
It's a game, I know.
Yeah, it's
Similar to
sport.
baseball, yeah.
It's a world passion. Anything else?
When we say
So, have you read that?
we should be detached from material thing, and we should be like, the second reason is like we are happy, then we are in Krishna consciousness. Sometimes this happiness goes down, like we lose that the level of happiness for some reason, or like in our day-to-day like activities, we see that something like something gets hurt and we just go behind. So this will not allow us to again pick up and grow, right? So how do we manage such situations?
So even in our devotional life, that's why Prabhupada says success or no success, a Krishna conscious person is steady in his determination. Because when we practice devotional service, you know, whether it's our chanting, sometimes we really are enthusiastic to chant, and other times we're not. We go and we want to go cook for Krishna. Sometimes we're very enthusiastic to do it, and sometimes we're not. The reason that it is symptomatic of one thing: we have some attachment to the result. I'm enthusiastic to cook for Krishna if there are someone there who's going to tell me how great it was. So now my cooking for Krishna was to please them and not Krishna. I'm enthusiastic to sing for the Lord if there are 12 people to hear. Then I'm going to be very enthusiastic. If it's just me in the temple room, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. So now am I singing to please the Lord or to obtain the admiration of others? I'm very enthusiastic to speak about Krishna when the house is full. But then if not, well, am I, right? So this attachment to results means that I'll have ups and downs of my determination. But if my determination is just to please Krishna, in what situation can I be less enthusiastic? None. I can go, and let's say cooking, I'm just picking that one, and there's no bhoga in the freezer to cook. I'm now unenthusiastic. Why? Because I wanted to cook certain things. Okay, Krishna has a plan. Let me put, what I'm cooking is not the item, it's the love that's going into it. So what is the limiter of the love that goes into it? That's me. Not what bhoga is there. The microphone is not working well, and so the bhajans are not being sung well. No, Krishna is hearing this, not this. Right? So whenever it's good when we experience, we say, okay, no, there's some attachment to the result. So when we become less enthusiastic, we should diagnose. Oh, this is wrong. Okay, let me become steadfast again. So by acknowledging and recognizing that there is this ups and downs, because in spiritual life, there should be no ups and downs. Material life, there's always ups and downs. But in bhakti, that's why Prabhupada said, success or no success. He was steady and enthusiastic, whether there was nobody coming, or it was flowing like nobody's business. They couldn't even manage, so much success was coming. He didn't care. He was fully enthusiastic. And that happens when we're detached from the result. Our only goal is to please Krishna. And that's pure devotional service. Anyavilashita sunyam gyanakramadinamatam anukulyena Krishna anushilanam bhaktir uttama. Uttama, highest bhakti. No desires. Just actively serving Krishna with a mood to please. Anukulyena. That is the highest bhakti. That'll make us steady. Okay?
Prabhupada took 69 years, right?
No, it did not take him 69 years. Don't apply material calculations. He was a pure devotee from 5 years, from birth. When he was performing the Rath Yatra festival, he was pleasing the Lord. Krishna scripted the pastime. But if you read his Lilamrita, his biography,
No, I'm reading that.
you're reading Lilamrita.
I said 69 because when I say it took 69 years for him to, how to say, and initially there were nobody were taking his philosophy, but every time he used to try, and then he tried to translate Bhagavad Gita, and then he couldn't find any publishers, so that took almost like 12 years, but he didn't give up. Then again he went and met with all politicians in India, and Lal Bahadur Shastri he supported, but then eventually
He pulled back.
he pulled back. So it's like,
But why that happened?
no, that happened. That's the reason he came to America, or else he would have never traveled to America. He would have stayed back in India.
But why this whole pastime of Srila Prabhupada happened? It is for our instruction. We see that Srila Prabhupada remained determined and fixed in fulfilling the instruction that was given to him. And it's his whole life is an example for us that when results don't come, stay determined.
No, that's why I said it took 69 years for him.
But it did not take him 69 to qualify. I want to make sure that he's a Sanapata Bhakta sent by Krishna to perform this mission. But he had his own plan. Krishna had his own plan for how Srila Prabhupada was going to come. And also, when big results were coming, Srila Prabhupada was fully detached. He was so humble. It's extraordinarily difficult to be the recipient of all of that adoration and praise. He's fully detached. He didn't care. I told you the story of the watch once, Srila Prabhupada. So one of his disciples, who was a little bit wealthy, and had given him a gift, and he gave him a Rolex watch. And he gave him this Rolex watch. And he took it, wore it, as an offering from his disciple. Then like a month or two later, someone else came and offered him some Timex or Casio watch, very, nice watch, but simple. And he's, oh, nice watch. And he took off his Rolex and took that watch very lovingly. And the disciples were like, Prabhupada, you just, I don't care. This is the love of my disciple that I'm accepting. He's fully detached to the material opulence. And that wasn't just a show of example. That was just his nature. So when there was great success, or less so, that is an instruction for us. Chant your rounds, whether you're enthusiastic or not. No, it's the right thing to do. Make yourself enthusiastic. And you'll see the fruit of that determination. It's very sweet fruit. Shall we chant?